British Columbia is looking for ways to force people to pay their fines for breaking COVID rules. New legislation introduced Tuesday would allow the government to deny those with unpaid fines a driver's license or the right to renew one. In March, BC more than doubled the base fine for breaking pandemic rules from $230 up to $575. Hosting or organizing a prohibited event could cost you $2,300. Mike Farnworth is British Columbia's Solicitor General, and he's in Victoria. Mr. Farnworth, on the question of the driver license renewals, how many people are actually being fined for COVID violations and not paying? How many people would face this new censure?
Well, right now, our latest is around almost 1,900 individuals have received COVID-related tickets. And of that, about 14% have been paid at this point. Mm-hmm. And so this legislation is intended to ensure that those that have received tickets do in fact have to pay their fines.
What do you think it says that, I'm doing my math quickly, 86% of people who've got COVID fines aren't paying them?
Well, in many ways, I'm not surprised. I mean, first off, when you receive a ticket, you are entitled under administrative fairness to dispute the ticket. So there are 30 days to do that. And a number of tickets, I think about 35 or 36% are in fact being disputed. So they will go through a judicial process, either through a judge or a justice of the peace. Mm-hmm. So that takes a little bit of time. Then there are others who, when it comes to COVID, have some really bizarre and strange views that somehow the rules don't apply to them. And we've seen the COVIDiot rallies where people have had tickets, and their view is that they can do what they want, and they are going to find out that there is a penalty and that they are going to have to pay their fine. And so, most people have been doing the right thing. And this is really a small minority of people who have received tickets who, can dispute it in court, mm-hmm. or pay the fine.
Okay, this is ultimately about people who break those rules around the COVID restrictions, but I want to ask more broadly about restrictions. I look at what Ontario Premier Doug Ford has been calling on Ottawa to do, and there hasn't always been clear specifics, but I want to ask you, British Columbia being one of those provinces where international flights could land, Doug Ford calling for a further restriction of international flights. Does British Columbia believe that should happen? And if so, which flights? From where?
Well, first off, we think what's been in place has by and large been working. British Columbia was the first province to call for restrictions at the border. Those were put in place here in BC. And so you had initially staffed by provincial employees. When people arrived in Canada at IVR, they had to show that they had an isolation plan for 14 days. Mm-hmm. And a quarantine plan that ideally that should be done ahead of time. At that time, about less than 50%. Now we see about 92% of people arrive to Canada, and many of them are Canadians coming back, have that plan in place. What we want to make sure is that the enforcement that follows up from that is in fact taking place. What's also of concern to us, and we have raised this.
Whose job is that enforcement?
Domestic.
Whose job is that enforcement, Solicitor General? Like if you're not saying that restrictions are the issue, but enforcement is, who needs to step up? What
I'm saying is that at the border, we have seen what's been taking place. Enforcement has been done by RCMP. For example, here in British Columbia, tickets are issued for violating the Quarantine Act. They're also followed up with phone calls from contact tracers or from not contact tracers, but from people at the airport, mm-hmm. who have phoned to check that people are in fact abiding by and are at their residence, and quite often they are paid a visit, and we track those stats on a regular basis. One of our challenges, of course, still continues to be the domestic airports. We've raised concerns about that with the federal government.
Yeah, and can I ask you a bit about that? Like Ontario, for instance, has been calling for PCR testing of all air passengers who arrive on domestic flights into Ontario. Do you think that's something that you would like to see right across the country?
We have said that we would support that. I have said that we would support that. Getting a test, let's say, before you board a flight, would be, I think, a good step to take. We don't have an issue with that.
Far more people, of course, are traveling by car and even traveling by car in between provinces. Supposed to be only for essential reasons, but people are doing that. Do you think, when you look at the land borders, international travel in particular, that Canada should be adopting what Premier Ford has called for, that people crossing that land border should also have to go for 3 days to a quarantine hotel?
We are satisfied with the way the situation is working here in British Columbia. As I said, people coming to the border have to have a quarantine plan in place. They have to quarantine for 14 days, and we are finding, by and large, that is working. What we want to ensure, and we base our decisions on the recommendations, the requests, and the advice of the provincial health officer. We have been doing that since the beginning of this pandemic, and that's how we will be continuing here in BC to make decisions in terms of travel restrictions, in terms of provincial health orders, and in terms of how we are dealing with the pandemic here in BC.
Yeah, and when I look at the way you've dealt with it, so in recent weeks, you've asked people not to travel or told people not to travel between health regions. I look next door, and Alberta has 3 times the COVID infection rate that exists in British Columbia right now. You essentially have signs up at the places where Alberta and BC, where those border crossings right now, just signs. What has the advice suggested to you about whether that should be stepped up? Whether you don't have checkpoints now, why not?
What we have in British Columbia is we have travel prohibitions between health regions, and there are 3 in BC. So basically the Lower Mainland, Vancouver Island, and then the interior and the north. And we have said no non-essential travel between those regions, because in BC, where the challenge has been in terms of dealing with COVID, and in particular variants and hotspots, has been on the Lower Mainland. And so we're trying to discourage travel between the Lower Mainland and those other parts of the province. What we have seen since they have been put in place is a significant reduction in travel. Traffic, for example, to Vancouver Island on BC ferries is down 50%. Last weekend, and that's on an already reduced sailing schedule. We have had the road checks on the 4 major routes to the interior of British Columbia. Again, traffic was down significantly.
But why no road checks? Why no road checks from traffic coming in from Alberta?
Because, as I said, we are basing our decisions on the recommendations and requests from the provincial health officer. We monitor what's going on in Alberta, right. And what we are seeing that in terms of transmission of cases in this province, the biggest area of concern is in the Lower Mainland, and in particular, the Fraser Health Authority. That's That's why we have put in place the restrictions that we have put in place.
Got it. Okay.
We put in place, there is warning signs at the Alberta border. They will continue to be in place. We will monitor what's going on there. We have done media in terms of Alberta and in other parts of the country, reminding people now is not the time to visit British Columbia, to stay away. Once we're through this pandemic, you're absolutely welcome, just not now.
Mr. Farnworth, I'll leave you to it. It sounds like your phone or doorbell or something's ringing there.
No, that was the legislative bell calling the afternoon sitting, and it's just the one set, so it's finished now.
Okay, all done. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.